Hello, I'm Shannon Brown, sound healer, vocalist, educator, and ceremonialist, and I support my clients to awaken their voice and unleash the power of sound. Welcome to the Sacred Sound Summit. Awaken your voice, heal through sound, transform your life. This week, you will experience a revolutionary online gathering of renowned sound healers, vocal alchemists, ceremonial leaders, and visionaries in the field of sound. This event will awaken, empower, and elevate your understanding of sound as a gateway to transformation, healing, and expanded states of consciousness. Today, I welcome Allison Bagg. Hi, Allison.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
It's so wonderful to see you. Today's topic is cultivating energetic hygiene in your sound offerings. And before we jump in, I'd love to read a little bit of Allison's bio and introduce you to Allison. Allison Bagg is a sound healer, breathwork facilitator, intuitive guide, and artist based in Los Angeles. She utilizes a plethora of modalities to help her clients ground into their bodies, establish strong boundaries, and open portals to the magic and abundance within. Certified in gong, crystal alchemy singing bowls, planetary chimes, and tuning forks, Allison aims to bring together both hemispheres of the brain in a beautiful marriage of spirit and science. Everything is vibration, after all, and by tuning ourselves like instruments, we can activate the healer within, reprogramming both the cellular and energetic forces within. It's so nice to have you here, Allison.
Yes, great to be here.
Yes. So I would love to hear from you. What is your story and your evolution with sound?
Mm. Yeah, well, it's so funny because you could go all the way back to the Big Bang for all of us. And I always love to evoke that every creation story across religion and culture and time and space starts with some sort of sound vibration coming into form that sets off and catapults life. And I always like to say the Big Bang is still making its way and living through us. But sound is primordial. It's something that is evocative, that and a language that we all speak. And I've always been drawn to music and felt the power and emotionality of this universal language, how it's able to just tap into those more subtle layers of our energetic body. I always used to curate playlists for friends. I was interested in piano and I took classes as a kid, but always kind of dated musicians and never thought I was a musician. And I always also like to reflect that to my students because oftentimes the people we surround ourselves with are just mirrors to an aspect of self that maybe hasn't come online yet or that is starting to form. And so it really was a journey through a lot of grief that led me to this path. My mom died when I was 17, and I think through that, I was always exploring consciousness and ways in which that I could connect with her and peer through the veil and open myself to spirit and just create this pathway of communion. And I explored a lot of different modalities through that exploration, and sound just felt like such a powerful force of simultaneous grounding and ascension. I still feel this way. It is something that invites us deep into the body to root down, but also to rise up and to feel into all the layers of self. And so it was really through this journey of different modalities where I felt sound really landed a lot of my interests, and it became something I couldn't escape from anymore. I always thought I would train in yoga first, and that was always kind of my entry point. But on a yoga retreat, I met my sound mentor in Iceland, and then I had to go on her retreat to Egypt, and then that was an entirely sound-based retreat where we were working with vocal toning, doing a lot of sound activations in the pyramids and temples, and I came back with what I like to call an energetic flu. It just opened and activated something within my DNA that was kind of terrifying, but also really powerful. And I do believe that there are certain places on earth that call to us to awaken latent DNA or kind of set forth a new pathway. And this was Egypt for me. And after that, I ended up training with that mentor and then going to Egypt again and going on many other sound retreats and continuing to explore sound with other teachers. But it's just been kind of an organic process and an unfolding of following curiosity. And it continues to be more and more interesting every time I learn something new. The layers that it just allows to peel back every time is so intimate and fascinating. So I think it's really the first seed of this was just desire to connect with my mom and the spirit realms and my higher self and my ancestors and kind of get some understanding of consciousness. And then from that, it just continues to grow.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, and it really moves me. My mom also passed away, not when I was your age, when I was 30, but for me, it was a really big deal. We were really close. And I remember as a little girl, my mom and I used to sing together all the time. So I know that a lot of my voice comes from her, and I know she's present with me, especially when I'm working in those spirit realms. So I really appreciate what you're saying. Yeah. And I think those large shifts in our world, these very fundamental experiences of grief and loss that we go through really can open up. It's almost like the light comes through when we are in deep pain, and it can often trigger spiritual evolution. So it's definitely challenging, but there is so much that we learn, and it's beautiful to see how you've moved into sound, and to hear your journey of your evolution in sound. So
Yeah,
thank you.
thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, grief
Um,
is such a portal to presence, and I think that is what sound also invites us into, is just to become intimate with the here and now moment, and it's kind of it anchors us. And so grief also is something that when you're feeling it, it kind of takes over, and then you're just here, and that is the grace of it. That is the gift of it.
yeah, yeah. And I know that we also share a love of the arts, and you're an artist, as am I. I would love just to ask you, how does art influence your sound, and how does sound influence your art? I've seen your Instagram posts. I was so drawn to you a couple of years ago when I first saw your work, and you have these beautiful photos of you in the canyon, in the mountains, in sacred temples, in the pyramids. And so I find that what you post about sound is so intriguing. Can you tell us a little bit about the mix of art and sound?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my mom was a graphic designer, so I think that that also shines through me, and it's something I continue to explore. And I was actually a film major in college. That was my desire has always been storytelling, and sometimes that's auditory and sometimes that's visual. But I found with film specifically, and what drew me to it is it's such a powerful medium to explore philosophy, psychology, anthropology, sociology, and art all in one. And it does evoke a meditative state. When we are watching a film or a TV show, we are automatically kind of dropped into an alpha brainwave state. So we're in a hypnosis. And there can be some maybe nefarious usage of that in certain programming or whatever it may be. But the idea of dropping into this state, and there's a bunch of amazing essays that I loved in college by Roland Barthes and Susan Sontag about the psychological experience of being in the movie theater and how it evokes the mother's breast, and just very interesting dialogue around the also Plato's cave. We can evoke a lot of things with film as a medium that I think makes it really spiritual. And it also evokes the astral, the dream world, the language of the emotional realms. And so I was always drawn to it, but then, and I still am, certainly. And visuals, they say, um, an image is 1,000 words. It evokes so much more, and also then it gets interpreted by the eye of the beholder, and it can mean just infinite things. And so I love always playing with that as well, and how it right away kind of touches on these more subtle realms of our emotional body. But I found that film without rhythm, without a score that really opens it, doesn't land in the same way. And music has the ability to evoke similar feelings or astral exploration with a little more spaciousness, a little more of the void, and without maybe as direct and clear interpretation, there's more nuance. So I love both mediums for exploring the subconscious realms and the unconscious and dream language. But I found that music as a standalone practice has also this ability to connect with time and space in different ways. And it just felt like something I wanted to continue to explore in my desire to connect through visual storytelling. And now it's all storytelling. So I do still love creating images that are portals of remembrance. That's kind of what I think of with both of these mediums, with visuals and with sound. They're both portals, they open doorways. They remind us of aspects of self, maybe of past lives, especially sacred sites around the world. I love to visit them. And as I mentioned, I do believe that they open and activate our DNA. And maybe that's past life remembrance, or maybe just different codes, electromagnetic frequencies of these spaces that invite something in. So even just seeing an image of these spaces, I think, can really open and activate people. So I love to mix kind of surrealism or magical realism with my images, so that there's always an element of not knowing what's real or what's not real, because that's the feeling that place gives me. And I try to express that through some sort of sprinkling of fairy dust or magic or color in some way that's a little bit off from our traditional way of viewing the world, our matrix. And I also like to invoke a little bit of playfulness into all of my images, because I think the world could definitely use a little bit of levity and a reminder to bring that kind of childlike awe and wonder to spaces, places, environments. And I do think this also changes the atmosphere, not only the atmosphere of the place, but then the atmosphere of the environment in which someone's viewing something. So they're kind of spells, they're kind of magical, uh, just invitations, I suppose, to also view the world in that way. And hopefully they maybe inspire other people to also travel and find these vortexes for themselves, and just stay curious and stay interested, and maybe notice things with a different perspective.
Oh, I love what you're saying. You're speaking my language. You just touched upon so many beautiful things. Um, it's interesting because when a baby is born, they often see and hear and have their other senses taste, feel before they learn language. So therefore, imagery will go directly to the brain. And people actually don't know this as much. It's not really taught to us, but that's why a powerful image can go directly into a person and attend to their unconscious and attend to their like pre-verbal brain and go into those places, those deeper, more dreamlike spaces within us, into our psyche, more quickly than words. So you speaking about this experience with imagery and then with sound, the difference is in some ways, music with words and lyrics are going to be more directive. And you had said that too. They're more directive than a soundscape, which allows us to really journey into these magical places. And I would love to ask you, for anyone that's watching, they might be curious, how can I bring more magic? How can I bring more of this mystery into my sound baths when I'm sharing with people? Do you have a way of doing this, or is this something that people are born with? How would you recommend this to our viewers?
Yeah, no, and this is such a great question, and I think the answer for me right now in this moment is silence and spaciousness, because I do believe that one of the gifts of a sound journey is it's kind of a Trojan horse because it really invites us into silence and to find safety in the void in a way. And sound is a mixture of silence and space. The silence is actually part of the rhythm. And that's where there's an opportunity to stretch out. I like to say in my journeys that, you know, thoughts are going to arise because we live in um, a very mind-oriented society, vata imbalance perhaps within the Western world specifically. And the to-do list will arise, thoughts of dinner later, whatever it may be while we're in meditation, and that's okay. But maybe to start to notice and stretch out in the spaces between our thoughts and start to elongate there and luxuriate there. And perhaps this will start to then infiltrate our regular everyday life where we're also just going at this fast pace. So I think also thinking about each instrument as a portal, as a doorway, as a texture. Tonal painting is something I like to invite students to think about. And you can do this with even just one instrument. It doesn't have to be many instruments. Many instruments can evoke different elements as well. There's wood, metal, crystal, and they all kind of have their own tone, texture, timbre. But within even a singing bowl, the way that you strike it, the way that you sing it, the mallets you use, that all can also create different texture. And this is where we start to maybe integrate the idea of storytelling or crafting a narrative. So I like to remind also students that intentionality plays just as important a role as any of the sounds that are emerging from the space. And the intention for spaciousness or for depth, for whatever the group might be needing or requiring in that moment. If you're imbuing the space with that intentionality and emitting that frequency, it's going to entrain the room as well with your thought form, with your energetic signature. It's going to work through the space. So I bet a lot of people are evoking this formula from Jonathan Goldman, which is a classic, but intention plus frequency equals healing. And this is a mantra, an affirmation I like to remind myself of and also bring into the space is my intentionality being one of grounding the space, of a downregulated nervous system, of safety, of rest, of expansion, whatever is really coming up is going to imbue the room with that. So finding ways to create ritual and ceremony within the sound journey, inviting yourself to also receive too, and this will allow you to drop into a deeper meditative state with it, and then let yourself be held in the holding of the space by all the people that came before you that also work with sound. Let yourself be a conduit, a channel, a vessel for the magic to work through you. And, it takes practice, it takes time. Getting out of your own way is one of the big journeys of life. And when we do this, we can feel into an intuitive kind of calling of what instrument to go to next, where to invite silence and spaciousness. And like I mentioned at the beginning, there's so many layers with sound that just continue to be interesting to me. And right now, time is one of them. So the timing of things and the rhythm of things and invoking in that fourth dimension has been really fun to play with, because that's where also silence comes in and where to stretch out a little bit. But I do think, regardless of all of that, something to just land on is the importance of internalization and externalization with every sound journey. And this is something that I was taught in my yoga nidra training, but wasn't really taught in my sound training. I was definitely taught kind of a narrative structure with the sound journeys. And I do think it also depends on it's a stylistic choice. Some people have a more shamanic style of leading a sound journey in which they're shaking up a lot of energy in the room and kind of using instruments that have that texture of breaking up stagnancy, like rain sticks, shakers, the gong, things that kind of shake things up. And then there's more restful sound baths that are inviting people to drop into this deep theta brainwave state, maybe even delta, and rest in there. So you're not wanting to really bring people out of that in the middle. And regardless of that, I think the internalization, the way you take people in, ground them into safety, ground the room, also invite people to set an intention. In Yoga Nidra, we call this a sankalpa, which is like a North Star. And it's not something you can fail at. It's either something you're moving towards or away from, which I love. And bring that into the space. And then the externalization, how you bring people out. This is all creating good energetic hygiene for the room, because regardless of what happens in the middle, creating that safety in the beginning, grounding people gently, and then easefully bringing them back out so that they're embodied, they're grounded, they are sovereign, they are in their senses, not enmeshed, all of that, and then able to maybe drive or whatever they need to do is really important. And as part of my externalization process, I love leaving a good bit of silence at the end of a sound journey. I think that becomes really crucial. And it becomes really interesting to notice, even as a space holder, the uncomfortability we might feel and the desire to fill the space that comes up sometimes. So sitting with a minute or even longer of silence is really, really powerful at the end. And that can be a really profound, maybe even the most profound part of the sound offering.
Oh, so beautiful. I love where you just took us. One of the things you said earlier on was tonal painting, and that just feels very synesthetic, m- this term synesthesia that we have, where we can uh, feel the sensation of a color or have a taste when we see a number. It's about brain regions touching, and so the tonal painting, tone is it can be used in visual arts, but it's also tone of the notes that we hear, and then painting. So it's another meshing of the two, which I really love. And then you did mention the word entrainment, and I'm sure that many people have heard that word, but could you explain it a little bit and what that is?
Yeah, it's a huge, um, important word for sound baths and the sound space, because that is essentially one of the foundational aspects of why it's such a beneficial practice. Entrainment just means kind of the vibration of one thing influencing the another vibration. So I like to use the example of the moon. The moon entrains the tides. So the water of earth is kind of entrained to the pulse, the rhythm of the moon. Also, when a group of women get together, we might notice that all of our menstruation gets synced. Maybe there's like an alpha of the group that entrains all the other women to her cycle. And that's another example of entrainment. Another one is, and there's a bunch of videos online of this, is a few metronomes and starting them at different times. And within a minute or so, not even very long, they sync up and they just start to be in the same rhythm. So it's just one rhythm influencing another. And I like to talk about it from this other perspective as well, which is our bodies are always kind of creating a pulse. We have the heartbeat, we have our brain waves. Those are kind of two different pulses that are not always in harmony and coherence, but breathing, sound meditation offers us an opportunity to come into coherence, to come into harmony. And it's because this rhythm is kind of influencing these maybe two different rhythms that are often bringing it into attunement. But when we don't have to create the rhythm internally on our own, our body can kind of relax. It allows us to fall into an existing rhythm, an existing pulse, and that is just relief for the body. The body doesn't have to expend extra energy creating this pulse. It can just fall into something, and that's part of the benefit of a sound journey is the deep relaxation that comes from not having to create that pulse. And just I like to invoke it as like drifting in a lazy river of sound and just letting yourself be carried.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that entrainment can exist in so many different ways. And the journey you just took us on was really fascinating to imagine, entraining with the moon and training with each other. And this is what we do every day. We're not separate. We're so connected to the earth. We're so connected to each other. And being in those spaces where we can turn off our minds and just allow our bodies and our spirits to surrender to the sound is really beautiful.
Yeah, and we entrain the room energetically too, regardless of the instruments. So this is also part of that intentionality piece is when we are grounded, when we are mirroring a downregulated nervous system, that entrains the other people in the space to also downregulate, to drop in, to be held in that. So we can entrain with our intentionality, with our vibration, not just with the instruments we're using, but why gongs and sound bowls are so perfect for sound baths is because they have these overtones and that establishes a really fast and deep entrainment. But we can entrain to a rhythm within like 15 seconds. If I were to just snap at this rhythm, in 15 seconds, we're all entrained to that pulse too. So it happens pretty fast.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your favorite instruments. So, which are the instruments you just talked about? Gongs and sound bowls. Do you have a favorite frequency? Do you have a favorite instrument? A favorite procession of instruments? Are you working with your voice? Where does your voice come in? Please tell us a little bit about what you like to work with because I just love seeing your background. And it's not even just instruments. You have like these fuzzy, soft, delicious, like comfy pillows and blankets and furs and that sort of thing. I love the aesthetic of it. So, yeah, please share with us.
Thank you. My Libra sun, and I have a Libra stellium, and my Taurus moon always like cozy, fuzzy textures, soft, kind of home, uh, yeah, just luxurious feeling textures. So I always like to have a space that also can invoke that for someone. I love crystal bowls. They were kind of just the first instrument I was drawn to. I still love them so much. And I love their lineage. I love that they are a technology. If people aren't aware, crystal bowls are kind of like an offshoot, a tangential instrument from the Himalayan metal bowl, which is also amazing and super powerful and has insane overtones. But the crystal bowls were invented more recently. They were kind of a happy accident in the creation of microchips. So around in the 90s and early 2000s, they came about in the creation of microchips in the computer industry. And they are kind of a technology for that reason, not just an instrument. I love that they activate and open the crystalline structure of our own DNA. I truly feel that they were kind of downloaded onto Earth for this moment for us to awaken this crystalline structure, maybe in the journey from carbon-based to crystal-based. And they just offer something so pure and beautiful. I love working with crystal alchemy bowls specifically. I love weaving in the different gemstones, minerals, and metals and how they have different properties too. And that's just something that I think is so powerful because one bowl can do so much. Let's say we have a big E bowl, which is one of my favorite bowls of the moment. I don't like to choose favorites, but they all have their time and place, but I'll just hit this bowl just as an example to show you guys. So this is a rose quartz platinum bowl. It's a 10-inch E.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
And it almost has a gong-like energy. I think the platinum, the metal of it, invites that in. It has such a pure tone, and not everybody subscribes to the idea of different notes being associated with different chakras. There is this idea within the sound world that you go from C to B, and that's the root to the crown. It's this kind of the C major scale, and then there's this other concept that the the black notes, the sharps or flats, are connected to the endocrine system of those same spaces. So if we were looking at this bowl from that perspective as an E note, this would be related to our solar plexus. But because it's such a deep bowl, it's also rooting and grounding. But because it also has rose quartz in it, it's opening the heart. So I love alchemy bowls because you're not so locked into the idea of like, this is for the solar plexus and that's it. It's able to connect with many spaces at once, which I think is more true to reality. And I also don't necessarily subscribe to the idea of like C notes for the root, D notes for the sacral. It's kind of like where you feel it is true and right, and we're all different. So it's just about trusting that intuitive connection where the bowl and where the sound lands, where it wants to go. It's going to find the space that it resonates with. So to maybe release that rigidity and invite in the intuitive pull to wherever it may be wanting to move. And also just with the alchemy bowls, we have the opportunity to think about it from many different perspectives, which I also really love. That being said, I also love gong and harp so much. I love flute. It's one of my favorite instruments to listen to is native flute. It just right away just drops me into such a peaceful place. I love listening to Coyote Oldman. I love Laraji. I love all of our great masters. I also love multi-instrumentalists and how they weave in different instruments at different times. So it's hard to say an exact favorite, but definitely the crystal bowls continue to be just so powerful. And I don't think we get to bathe in the sounds of crystal that often. So it also feels kind of like a novelty and a really beautiful, soft, and feminine experience. So, yeah, I think those are probably the one I would say is my favorite instrument.
Wow. Yeah. And again, I can't help but come from my aesthetic perspective as well. They're just so beautiful looking too. The colors and the shapes, and then the sound that they evoke at the same time. It's just bathing in this synesthetic experience of color, light, sound, shape, um, vision, travel, dreaming, mystery. Like it really is. It is alchemy. It's mystical. It brings all of us who have this very deep kind of spiritual desire to step into the mystery.
Yeah.
Sound healing allows us to do that.
Yeah, they're really like kind of created drone. And I think Miles Davis has this quote, which is like, there's no wrong note. It's kind of the next note that you play that determines the note before. And I think also the juxtaposition sometimes with crystal bowls and then something really textural and like a really nice rain drum or some chimes or something that just kind of shakes up that droniness, then even accentuates or amplifies the power of the bowls, but then takes you into a different place. So it's again this tonal painting, this idea of weaving in lots of textures and how each instrument is a portal. And I also like to invite my students to not just think about maybe traditional instruments, but look for texture and sound in things that maybe aren't traditional instruments. And maybe we can even look at ASMR and how that's become such a big movement, and look at the way different sounds and textures are evoked in that way. Like even just rubbing a wood floor at the end of a sound bath can feel like such a lovely sound. Or I found some really cool little chimes at gas stations or I use a necklace to make some little chimey sounds. So even just opening yourself to the idea of different things that aren't traditional instruments, creating music and weaving in maybe some of these textures becomes a really fun and playful way to also build your kit.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the things I do as well with my students is I'll sort of spring it on them and I'll say in the break in one of our classes, okay, I want you to look around your room and pick something up that you could make noise with. And we're going to share and you're going to talk about, what that evokes in you. And I've had people pick up like prescription bottles with some pills in it and shake it and actually in one of my sessions with a client, we were doing a sound session online and I had a Koshi chime and I put the Koshi chime down. And for some reason, the little handle on the Koshi chime was like swinging back and forth on the chime itself, like because something was moving. And he said, "What's that sound?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, he just kind of described it. And I said, "I think it's the side of the handle of the Koshi chime." And he said, "Could you just do that a bunch of times? I really like the sound." So we do sometimes get caught up in the traditionalness of what a sound bath should be or what it should look like or how long it is, or what each note means. But again, we become creators of space and time and mystery. So I love that, just opening up this creativity and this playfulness in the space. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
there's a great practitioner, Bodhi Starwater, and he makes his own feather wands by, finding a feather on a walk and then how different birds have a different kind of sonic expression if you were to use their feather. Like an owl feather is too silent because they fly really silently. But if you were to find a really great feather, it's almost like you can then evoke like a bird flying through the room, and you can also make your own chakapa, you can make your own drum. I made a drum last year that was such a powerful experience, and also then connecting with the idea that the women were drummers, if people are familiar with Lane Redman, and the documentary When the Women Were Drummers, the book, all about how women were the carriers of rhythm, which kind of goes back to that idea of entrainment, and also the idea of maybe the first sound we ever hear is the sound of our mother's heartbeat in the womb. So the drum brings us back to that. So every instrument has their lore, their lineage, their history, their and I get kind of pulled into different ones at different times. And so I like to think of myself as a multi-instrumentalist because I like to weave those in, but I'm always a student, always a seeker, and always learning about new things. But I think definitely making your own instrument starts to change things. It starts to invite us to co-create and then also imbue our instruments with ceremony, with ritual. Maybe, hopefully this doesn't happen to you, but if a bowl were to break, you could take those shards and then make a little shaker, a little rattle out of that, and then repurpose it into a new instrument. And then you're still carrying that frequency with you in another way. So, yeah, when you start to explore the co-creation and the playfulness, I think it really opens things up. And then in the sound journey, using one of these tools that you've made or that you've repurposed feels just extra exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Carl Jung talks about dreaming the dream forward. So taking your dream and then making art from it, or taking your dream and making a musical soundscape from it, or what you said there about, if something breaks, you can turn it into something new. So yeah, we are all creators in our own way.
Yeah.
So when our clients or students are creating sound baths, could you give us a couple of tips for longevity and energetic hygiene practices? And then I would like to invite you to share a little of your beautiful sacred sound with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, this is such an important part of longevity in this space because I think we can really burn ourselves out easily in this work if we aren't discerning and aren't grounding and don't have maybe regular everyday rituals and routines to upkeep with that. I like to think of it like our immune system. And ideally, we don't wait until we get sick to then take a bunch of vitamin C or echinacea or whatever we opt for. But we're every day kind of working towards strong immunity with our choices, with the water we drink, with the food we eat, with our sleep, with the air we breathe, with exercise. And so this idea of energetic hygiene is a daily practice. It's not just something we we do once we feel as if we've enmeshed or taken on some energy from a session with a client or something like that, and then have to do some bigger work. It's something that we're practicing regularly. So I like to invite my students and people I work with to create a morning ritual that can just feel really sacred and special, and that they prioritize for either grounding, for a little bit of movement, for shaking off the lymph, whatever that may be. Maybe it's a little qigong in the morning. I have a morning qigong video on YouTube that's only 10 minutes that I recommend people try as just a starting point. Maybe it's some sort of field clearing, and maybe in a moment we can also do just a little exercise that I like to do, um, that invites us to ground and also set an intention and land it in the body. But so this practice becomes something we're maybe engaging with regularly. And then there's bigger rituals that I like to invite people to start to think about, which we bring in before, during, and after our sound journey. So before, it's just making sure that you are grounded, that you're taking care of yourself, that you've eaten a grounding meal. Maybe if you're holding a virtual session, that meal wouldn't be too close to the actual session, because we might want to be aware of the grumbling of our stomach or something like that, especially when we have mics involved. But that also might entrain people to drop in to rest and digest. So it's always, oh, there's always a time and place for everything. But just making sure that leading up to the experience, we are doing all of the practices that we need to feel grounded and clear and centered and all of that. I like to invoke elementals with a lot of these practices. And even just with talking about the instruments a moment ago, elementals come into play with our instruments a lot. So even with the gong, there's different ways we can strike it that invite in earth, fire, air, water. With the drum, the talk of the fire, the doom of the earth, the chaw of the air. Like the different ways we play the drum also invoke different elementals. So if elementals are something that is exciting to you, maybe working with that as a centering, a grounding, or shielding exercise. So those are kind of the three areas that I like to invite people to start to think about their energetic hygiene: centering, grounding, and shielding. And so just before the sound journey, maybe it's working with essential oils or having a bath or going on a walk or any of these tools that could be really grounding and centering. And then maybe it's also in what we wear to the space. So maybe we want to show up with certain jewelry, certain armor that is protective and that also maybe is connected to an ancestor or a guide or an archetype that we feel is really protective and powerful, that we're evoking and calling into the space with us. Maybe it's wearing certain colors that are either reflective or are kind of involving different chakras. Maybe we're wanting to really feel grounded, so we wear red, or maybe we're wanting to open our throat chakras, so we are wearing blue, whatever that may be. So thinking about color and armor and adornment as a way to also invoke energetic hygiene. And maybe if this is also something you want to explore deeper with ancestral work or guides, it's setting up an altar and working with that daily, and offering the elements there, the water, the earth, the fire, the air, the ether, and calling that in, and inviting yourself, as I mentioned earlier, in the space to not only hold it on your own and kind of use your own life force energy in the space, but to be held in that, to call in support so that you are giving from source rather than through your own life force. And this will also create longevity for this practice so that you're not depleting your reserves, that you are a vessel, that you are a conduit. So maybe that is doing some deeper work around your lineage and who you'd like to feel supported by in this space. And maybe again, that's wearing a ring from your grandmother or wearing something that could call them into this space. A mantra or affirmation that I like to remind people of to also use for energetic hygiene is observe, not absorb. And the idea of being a window and not a door. I think a lot of people that are drawn to this work and to holding space it's because they're empaths. They're highly sensitive people. And sometimes the gift feels like a burden because we take on a lot. We are hyper aware, hyper vigilant of people and their energy. Maybe we have different clear clairvoyance of seeing something, clairsentience of feeling someone else's energy and their pain or whatever it may be, clairaudient, hearing things. And so inviting these to be a gift rather than a burden is a lifelong journey, learning how to work with this and master this. But I think starting to invoke the idea of observing, not absorbing, and that idea of being the window, not a door, is one in which we're still inviting that information to come through, but we're not holding it. We're letting it pass through. And this is all about good boundaries. This is all about being grounded and discerning over what's yours and what's not yours. So this is part of the ritual practice, the daily practice of grounding, of embodiment. Because when we know what's ours, it's easier to discern what's not ours. And that helps us then when maybe we have taken something on to be able to release it or to kind of discover where it might be in the body or in the field and then do whatever practices we need to release it. So during the sound journey, I like to also invite people to explore this idea of observing, not absorbing, to be held in the space and not giving from your own life force energy. And then maybe it's setting up the space in a way that feels really energetically protective. Maybe it's not having anyone's feet facing towards you because they say that people release from the feet. And maybe it's also setting up your instruments in a way that feels really protective. I also like to remind people that our instruments, the sound we create, kind of creates a bubble of protection around us. So you can always think about your sound, the sound around you is kind of protecting you. Maybe invoking the elements here can be kind of nice. If you're feeling like you're starting to enmesh or maybe noticing a little bit of permeable energy in your field, you can invoke the element of fire, maybe imagining that you have flames all around you protecting you or burning anything off that's kind of coming into your space. Maybe you can invite water, a moat around you, or rain, or something that just feels like it's really protecting you in that moment, protecting other people as well. It could be wood that you're around. You're in the middle of an old grove forest surrounded by beautiful trees. Maybe metal, even that there's shields around you, or sometimes the idea of mirrors, that you have mirrors around you that are reflecting things back. So these can be really fun and kind of a exploration with whatever feels exciting to you. And then after the sound journey is where a lot of the rituals and practices come into play. When I first started doing this, I was still strengthening my ability to observe and not absorb and not enmesh. So I would definitely feel a little bit of lingering energy that wasn't mine. So I had a more robust practice of clearing and grounding after my sound journeys. Now I'm at a place in which I can just think about doing some of these practices and they're done. So, also different seasons require different energetic hygiene. So I notice sometimes my nervous system is a little more fragile, a little more sensitive, and I have to bring back those practices in a more robust way. Other times I feel really strong. I can do multiple sound journeys in one day. So it's also about honoring the season that you're in, what your nervous system capacity is in this moment, and that'll inform what your practices are. But I'll give an example of maybe a good robust practice after a sound journey if a lot was moving in this space. So, I love that moment of taking sound at the end because it invites you to also ground and feel into yourself and down regulate if in case you were moving around the room a lot and your heartbeat is kind of been activated, or you need to catch your breath for a moment. So using that moment of silence to also come back into yourself, to check in, to breathe, and then maybe invite people to externalize. And once people, also knowing your capacity to just talk to people, maybe you're feeling really excited to talk to people, hear about their experience, or maybe you want to have a bigger boundary around that. So again, that's subjective and up to you. But let's say everybody has cleared the space, you're now packing up. Go gently, go slowly. This is always really important with both unpacking and packing your stuff. Just no rush here. Let's just do it gently. Our instruments are fragile, and just make sure that you're really grounded in your body. Sometimes even before doing that, I like to jump up and down a little bit, get in my body, do some movement, shake off a little bit, make some sound of my own. I like to wash my hands, maybe imagine that anything that isn't mine is just kind of being washed away and going down the drain. Then maybe coming home and inviting in any guides or ancestors just to be with me and support me, maybe feeling into my field, feeling into my body, noticing if there's anything that feels like it isn't mine, and then maybe inviting it to be neutralized and transmuted into gold, sending it into the earth. I think this point of neutralization is really important because a lot of times we might hear about this idea of return to sender, and that could create more karmic ties. So sometimes this idea of neutralization, I think, gets lost, but it's a really important one because it's not returning an energy back, it's neutralizing it first, and then maybe inviting it to be sent into the earth to be transmuted, to be alchemized. And that can be a really nice visualization. You can visualize a golden rose that's neutralizing energy, sending energy into that. You can also take a bath with Epsom salts, inviting anything that isn't yours again to go down the drain, the salt, the essential oils, whatever aromatherapy you might like. I didn't mention this before, but also maybe burning sage, Palo Santo, something at the start of the journey, at the end of the journey, to clear the space beforehand. Maybe if you do Reiki, inviting in a little bit of that during the session or before people come in to kind of clear the space, and call in different energies. Shoku-rei is a great one. And so there's a lot of different things you can weave in based off of your own history with different modalities. Um, and something that I think is also really important to remember is to trust whatever you feel called to do. I think a lot of times, especially when we're kind of in our baby witch era or whatever it may be, we are like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just want to, I'm just going to trust it. And that's a great starting point, is just to trust whatever feels called in the moment to invoke. So yeah, these are a lot of different ideas that you can play with. I think sometimes eating a grounding meal afterwards can be really, really supportive. Maybe it's something that was grown in the earth, like potatoes or root vegetables. Maybe it's meat if you eat meat. Maybe it's going on a walk, doing some movement, um, doing some breath work. They're all different styles and techniques to clearing and cleansing. Another one that I think is really cool, especially for sound practitioners, because we are auditory, is this closing door visualization, which is the idea of imagining all the doors between you and the person or the place you were just in closing, and hearing each door close. And that is kind of shutting off the energy. It's now saying, this is complete. We are, I'm no longer tied to this. We're creating a boundary. So that's also a really good one. And just a really simple, nice one is bare feet in the grass, grounding, inviting anything that isn't yours to kind of release out the feet into the earth. Also feeling the grounding energy of the earth kind of filling your body. Um, and again, also maybe smudging yourself, clearing your instruments. Um, those are all really great tools. So I ran through a bunch there, but hopefully something in there was really interesting and might be exciting for you to explore and try.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Wow. Yes, super comprehensive. and really reminds us of the importance of energetic hygiene, and that this is, it's interesting, the conversations that we're having these days as sound healers. This idea of, is it a performance? Is it a healing? Is it both? I think we're all rediscovering this new way of being that isn't one or the other, that there are, ritual and experiences and uh, offerings and bringing our heart and soul to things. It really comes down to just being in our truth and just being really aware and really present and really in the moment. And so, yeah, I think you brought
And
that up.
that is
So,
such a healing part of it, is just that's, the idea of being seen for people that maybe have never been mirrored that before, and being in a safe container is so healing. And so that's why the internalization process is really important, because it can be really traumatizing for people that haven't historically felt safe to close their eyes in a room that they don't know around a bunch of people they don't know. And so creating and establishing a safe container is so crucial. And I think for some people, they need to feel like there's an adult in the room at first. And so there's this idea of kind of, maybe there is a performative facade, or some sort of, I'm the teacher, I'm the adult in the room, and you're safe and I'm holding this space. And then knowing at what point to dissolve that once people are dropped in, so that we all are just co-creating the experience together, and inviting yourself to be held in that space too. Something I think a lot of practitioners can relate to is, when we're in a room, a group, obviously there's different energetic hygiene that might come into play with a group, with a virtual session, with an individual, with a couple. I mean, it's all nuanced. But let's say we're in a group. I find that there is often people in the room that they don't even realize it, but they're anchoring the space. And they maybe historically in their life with their friends or family, they're kind of space holders. And allowing them to also anchor the room can be really helpful for a facilitator or practitioner, someone who is also establishing safety in the room, and that can be really powerful. So knowing that you're not alone in it, and maybe again, there's the performative feeling of there's that adult in the room, and then letting it go. Ram Dass has this quote, like, hippies create police, police create hippies. And I like to think about this in the traditional Western model of health, and like the pharmaceutical industry is like, doctors create patients. So knowing when to dissolve the doctor or the teacher, so you're not keeping that person the patient, so that you're inviting them into healing and to be their own doctor, to be their own healer, is really important. So maybe initially, yes, there is this performative thing of, I'm holding this, and I'm established, and you can trust me, and I'm safe. And then letting that go to invite them to find that safety within themselves.
wow, that's such a beautiful way to wrap our conversation, and so empowering, and just a deep reminder of, we aren't necessarily healing others. We are inviting each of our students, clients, participants to open and feel safe to invite in their inner healer and to bring that online. So, yeah, so I know that you would like to share maybe a short 5, 6, 7 minute um, sound bath for us as an offering to bring us into that state. And I would really love that, Allison. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to. So, and maybe we'll start with just this little meditation. So I'll step back by the bowls, and then this will invite us to ground. I know that when we are in these conferences or listening to something, it really can be activating. We're in the mental sphere. So I'm going to invite us to come into the body and to integrate this information, let it land. So if you'd like to close down your eyes, if that feels safe for you to do so, and just start to notice your breath in this space. Maybe deepening the breath. The breath is our first act of trust. It invites us to Notice our patterns of inspiration, of expiration. It invites us to feel the expansion and the contraction. Maybe just also inviting in this sound, perhaps following this sound of the bowl into silence for a moment, letting that descend you as well, into the body, into the earth. And as you breathe here, maybe feeling the earth holding you below. Plugging yourself into the socket of the earth. And just to come into the body, I invite you to maybe start to rub your palms together, noticing the texture here, the sound, the sensation of touch, getting into the little nooks and crannies between the fingers even, maybe even exploring the idea of embodying one hand and then the other. What does it feel like to rub? What does it feel like to be rubbed? Noticing that. Creating a little bit of heat here. Our hands are an extension of our hearts. So we are opening and activating the heart. Now maybe pulling the hands apart and beginning to pulse them back and forth. Feeling this energy that you've cultivated here, this heat, your prana, your life force, starting to gather it into a ball. And this is a 0 point meditation. So as we gather this energy into a ball, we're going to explore landing at 0 point and then expanding our field. So once you feel you have a nice ball gathered here between your hands, just landing here and bringing your awareness to the center of the ball. Landing your consciousness here at 0 point. And now expanding to the perimeter of the ball. And then back to the center. Out to the perimeter and back to the center. Continuing to explore this expansion and contraction. Maybe even entraining this pulse, this rhythm of expansion and contraction with your heartbeat. Infusing this ball with the rhythm of your heart. And perhaps now projecting an intention, a thought form, a feeling into the ball for grounding, for clarity, for abundance, whatever it may be. Seeing this thought form projecting from your mind into the ball. And then placing the ball in your solar plexus. Landing here. Letting this energy infuse into every cell of the body. This intention. And just inviting it to strengthen, to be watered, fortified by these sounds for a few minutes here. You not just to hear sound, but to feel it. A vibroacoustic experience, a deep tissue massage, yourself float in this lazy river of sound. I'll let you know when it's time to return. Gently bring your awareness back to your breath. Maybe taking a nice slow inhale through the nose and let it go out the mouth. Again, inhale through the nose, bringing fresh energy and oxygen into the body. Let it go out the mouth. Last one like this, inhale through the nose, filling the belly. Expand the heart. Hold at the top, maybe sip in a little more air. And let it all go. And I thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Allison. What a gift. It's been just so wonderful to get to know you and to have this conversation. Ah, thank you so much for your brilliance and your light. It really is um, wonderful to dive deep with you and to share today.
Thank you so much. It was such a lovely conversation, and I look forward to continuing to connect.
Yeah, sounds great. And thank you, everyone. I know Allison has a free gift for everybody that you can click on the link below and follow up with Allison and to dive into her world a little bit more. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. And please remember to go to the Summit Facebook page and share what your biggest takeaways are from today. I will be there to support and dialogue with you. And I look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you, everyone.